morning from New Jersey. Kavya, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. It is my privilege and honor to speak at your Global Business Summit. And I am really honored to talk about a topic that I love talking about, as I like to call them Carla's pearls, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls after being a woman on Wall Street as of this summer for 33 years. And this morning, I want to spend some time talking about what powerful, impactful, influential leadership looks like, especially during turbulent times. As I reviewed 3 decades on Wall Street, I realized that I had had the opportunity to sit at the feet of some amazing leaders, and frankly, not so much. And when I thought about it also, I realized that growing up in the financial services and on Wall Street in particular, I had grown up in a producer culture. And in a producer culture, you are rewarded by great compensation and promotions and titles and often positions of leadership, authority, and managing other people without any thought as to whether or not you'd be the kind of person that could motivate and inspire people to deliver beyond that which they thought they could deliver, or whether or not you were the kind of person that could actually transform a culture during a turbulent environment, or whether or not you were the kind of person that could find real opportunity amidst chaos, like a pandemic that we're living in right now. You were rewarded because you were a great producer. You were the best trader. You were the M&A banker with the most revenues by his or her name. You were the lawyer with the most billable hours. But yet, we find ourselves in an environment today when the kind of leadership that I just talked about, the person that can transform a culture during turbulent times, the person who can actually find opportunity in chaos, that's what is required right now. And more than the exogenous factors that we're living in, i.e. the global pandemic or the social unrest, what's really driving this change in leadership, frankly, is the fact that millennials and Zers are quickly becoming the dominant population in the workforce. And they demand as table stakes transparency, inclusivity, and feedback. And if you're a boomer like me or an older Xer, you certainly didn't get a lot of feedback as you made your ascent in your career journey. You were told, keep your head down, work really hard. If you don't get fired, you know you're doing okay. And that kind of leadership won't cut it today. So the question is, what kind of leader do you need to be? How do you need to show up in order to be seen as a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment? And I argue that you must be intentional. You must be intentional around 8 things, or as I like to call them, 8 pearls. The first one is authenticity. Your authenticity is your distinct competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. And the day that you received your current opportunity, somebody else didn't get the job because you were the best person for the job. So the last thing any of us should ever do is to submerge that which is uniquely you. If you are choosing to sit in a leadership seat today, it is imperative that you bring your authentic self into that seat. Why? Because you will motivate and inspire those who are working with you. Notice I said with and not for. Those who are working with you to bring their authentic selves into that environment. And anytime any of us is in an environment where we can be who we really are, we will always outperform. And that will now accrue to your status in that leadership seat. It is particularly important in this environment because people are craving stability. They are craving certainty because we are in an environment where everything is uncertain. And if you are authentic and your team sees you as authentic, then as you try to lead them through this uncertain time, they will follow you because they trust you. When you are trying to build a relationship with a client and you bring your authentic self into that relationship, they trust you. So it is important now more than ever that you bring your authentic self as a leader into your environment. The second thing that you must be intentional about if you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader is building trust. Innovation is the dominant competitive parameter across all industries right now. And if you agree with me that innovation is the dominant competitive parameter, that means you know that as a leader, you will go into territories unknown. And all great leaders understand that you cannot do it alone. You cannot do it alone. You will need somebody else's intellect, somebody else's experience, and somebody else's access to a relationship in order to successfully prosecute any endeavor, which means you must take the time to invest in your team in order to build the trust. And whenever I'm trying to build trust, I remember that building trust is pretty easy. You simply deliver over and over and over again. I challenge you right now to think about the people in your life that you trust. Maybe you're thinking about the people that are taking care of your kids or looking after your parents, or that one restaurant that you go to when you know it has to be a special occasion and you know the food is outstanding and the service is impeccable. Why do you trust these people? Because they have delivered over and over and over again. Whenever I'm trying to build a relationship with a client, I try to think of 4 things that I can do before I ever ask for any business. And how do I understand what they value? I listen closely, because people will always tell you what they value. The third pearl that I want to leave you with this morning that you must be intentional about is creating clarity. Now, I've already made the case that innovation is the dominant competitive parameter across all industries, and that as a leader, you will go into territories unknown. But even when you cannot see, it is your job to create the clarity, even when you cannot see. And yes, you may not be able to see the outlook for a year. You may not be able to see it for a quarter or a month or the week. But even if you can see it for the day, as many of you may know, I helped to build a multicultural innovation lab within Morgan Stanley. It is the only global investment bank that has an in-house accelerator where we bring in 10 companies that have been founded by multicultural founders and or women. And we give them 3 things. We give them cash, we give them content to help them develop from being a founder to a CEO. And we also try to connect them with some of our largest investment banking clients to accelerate their growth. But when I built this 4 years ago, there was no model in the marketplace. We're still the only investment bank that has done such a thing. Others are trying, but we're the only one that have it. So I couldn't borrow from the competition. I couldn't even leverage internal intellect because no one in the firm had done something like this. And there were times when I wasn't sure what the next step should have been for the team. But in those times, I said, okay, here's the problem that we're trying to solve, this discrete piece. From 9 to 12, we'll focus on this. From 12 to 2, we'll have some lunch. And from 2 to 5, we'll focus on these things. So even though I could not define clarity for the long term, I could define it for a short period of time. As a powerful, impactful, influential leader, it is your job to define what success looks like. When your team is clear about what success looks like, then I believe that people are motivated to outperform that which has already been defined. The fourth thing that you must be intentional about is creating other leaders. Once you reach the leadership seat, the way to amplify your contribution in your organization is to create other leaders. It's to create other leaders, people who will then have the courage and the skill set to actually create something out of a blank sheet of paper. It's all about innovation, and we should all be reimagining what we do every single day. And the easiest way to expand your personal imprimatur is to empower other people to be able to do the same thing. The next pearl that you must be intentional about if you're going to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in this environment is you must be intentional about diversity. It does not just happen. If you do not have diverse thinking at your decision-making table, you will have a gap in your go-to-market strategy. And the business case around diversity is as follows. If you have to have innovation as the dominant competitive parameter, which I argue you do, you need a lot of ideas in the room because innovation is born from ideas. If you need a lot of ideas in the room, you need a lot of perspectives in the room because ideas are born from perspectives. If you need a lot of perspectives in the room, you need a lot of experiences in the room because perspectives are born from experiences. And if you need a lot of experiences in the room, you better start with a lot of different people in the room because experiences are born from people. So you must start with a lot of different people in the room to get to that one innovative idea that will allow you to obtain and retain a leadership position. And you must be intentional. We are all vulnerable to unconscious bias. 18 months after starting the Multicultural Innovation Lab, I looked up and my entire team was women. Not an ounce of testosterone to be seen anywhere. And I knew immediately I had a gap in my go-to-market strategy. And I was intentional about my next 2 hires being men. It does not just happen for any of us. The next pearl that you must be intentional about is innovation. You must teach your team to have the innovation muscle. And how do you teach people to be comfortable with innovating? Is you must teach them how to fail. If people are afraid of failing, they will never reach far enough in order to truly innovate. So as a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you must be careful about how you respond when somebody takes a risk and it doesn't work out. Your response should be, oh, wow, Wallace, that was really a big mistake. That's probably going to cost us a lot of money, but let's give Wallace a hand because he took the risk. And we therefore learned 3 things because he tried. The next pearl that I want to leave you with that you must be intentional about is inclusivity. So the question is, how do you show up as an inclusive leader? You simply solicit other people's voices. Solicit other people's voices. I'd like you to try this. The next time you bring your teams together, the next 4 times that you bring your teams together, you should say, we're trying to solve this problem. I'm going to get the conversation started. But Abby, I'd like you to add on to that. And Bob, I'd like you to add on to what Abby has said. Now, Charles, I'd like you to completely blow up this argument. Play devil's advocate. What's the other side of the argument that they have presented? Where are the gaps? And Davida, I want you now to add on to what Charles has said. What have you done? As a powerful, impactful, influential leader, you have done 2 very important things. The first thing you've done is that you said, I see you. You invited each of them into the conversation by name, which means you must engage enough with your team that you can call them in by name and invite them into a conversation. And who does not value being seen by the boss? The second important thing that you've done is that you said, I hear you. And ladies and gentlemen, everybody values being heard. Everybody values being heard. When you value what someone else is saying, you generate immediate currency in that conversation, currency that you can now reinvest back in that relationship. But most importantly, the intended consequence of what you have done is you've now put everybody's fingerprints on the blueprint. Now everybody is equally invested in the success or failure of that endeavor. And then the last pearl that I want to leave you with, if you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment, you must be willing to call a thing a thing. You must be willing to exercise your voice. Your team already knows it's a tough environment. Your team already knows the outlook is uncertain. The team already knows that there are some jobs that won't ever come back on the other side of this pandemic, but they are looking to you to give voice to the fact. You must be willing to call the thing a thing. And as I close, I tell you that the strand that holds all of these leadership pearls together is courage. It's courage. Because it takes courage to call a thing when that thing is pretty bad. We've all been in meetings where we know something should have been said and we all just look down at our shoes. It takes courage to show up as an inclusive leader and engage enough with your team that you can invite them into a conversation. You know that you have made it in the diversity and inclusion journey when you have arrived at belonging. When your people are saying, my chairman, my company, my CEO, my manager, they own it. You've made it in your journey. It takes courage to also teach people how to innovate when they are deathly afraid of failing. It takes courage to be intentional about diversity when we're all competing in a fast-paced, dynamic environment. It takes courage to create other leaders when you're not sure about your own career trajectory. It takes courage to create clarity when you cannot see. And it takes courage to engage and build trust. And lastly, it does take courage to bring your authentic self into any environment, which is why most people have such a hard time doing it. If you want to be a powerful, impactful, influential leader in today's environment, you must both expect and strategize to win. I thank you for the honor of sharing my leadership pearls with you this morning.